Hi, welcome back. I'm Mike Vincent. This is your carrier update brought to you by Powerfleet. I'm Mike Vincent. Like I said, he is not. He is Thomas Wasson. How are you, my friend?
Unfortunately not, but I'm doing well. So,
fortunately for them, there's not two of me up here. So
I would pay to see that. So what we have here is another episode of Trucking's Arrested Development. And so when we talk about arrested development, the problem is the market normally wants to develop to be profitable, but unfortunately, due to consumer changes and other problems, that does not appear to be the case. We are going through some periods of transition, and if you look over to me on the wall here, we're still going downhill. Both outbound tender rejections and outbound tender volumes are falling. They're falling fast, and when we look into this number, people ask, but why the tenders? Well, you know, not only are tenders a tasty meal that can be found at places like McDonald's, but load tenders are basically orders being given or requests for loads sent over electronically to the carrier. If you decline enough tenders, you either get yelled at, or in the past year, people would just ask, please haul my stuff. So kicking it over to our next chart, let's find out why things are going bad. Well, turns out that not only is it getting bad, but reefers, vans, and pretty much most of the volume is declining except for flatbeds. We talked about this earlier, the beacon of hope. Kicking over to chart 3, where we're looking at this is kind of what I want to dive into. This is some TCA indices. We're looking at revenue per truck per week. If you're in the industry and you're in trucking, that's kind of how did I do well this week?
Right. Revenue on truck, man, that's it.
And that's kind of how, because it's really hard sometimes. You have to wait till the end of the week to figure out if you did pretty well during the week. And I have next to it the DOE sliding scale for fuel, which is at 489. The big thing is this is about a 3 or 4 year snapshot. We have pre-COVID numbers here around 32 to 3,500. We make progress. 4164 as of the last update. This is a blend, which includes very large carriers. So don't call me and say, well, I made $6,000 last week. Well, congratulations. But when we look at the metadata, this is kind of what a lot of these large companies are reporting. So, averaged out.
Yeah.
What matters is it went up, but look at the fuel costs. At an arrested development. I want to make more money. Now I have more fuel. Ironically enough, the punchline is I'm still not making more money.
Yeah, especially for the smaller fleets, right? Because that's the DOE is the retail price per gallon.
Completely. These guys are buying it at the pump. They don't get it off the rack. They don't get the cool kids discount.
Yeah.
You have to have like a few thousand trucks for that. But moving on to our next chart, we're going to continue digging into why. Here's the map. Unfortunately, for anybody who's a carrier, the only beacon of hope is Nashville right now. Everything else is declining. And if you see here, we see when Nick talked about the snowstorms, this is a map that gives you height based on rejections. Parts of the upper Great Plains and going towards the Canadian border, low volume, high rejections, but nobody wants to drive up there. So, the rest of the country nationwide is still experiencing a decline in tenders, even down to like below 3% in California. We're no longer California dreaming, folks. It is California markets be balanced, which is not good for carriers, but great for customers watching this because now they don't have to get yelled at as much during their transportation budget meeting. The cycle of hate. Moving on to our next slide here. Trucks in the market. Why is that? Well, it's starting to become spring, but if you ask the capacity of that question, we are still concentrated not only along the eastern seaboard parts of Texas and the California area, but we've so far avoided those areas of weather. Capacity does not like to drive in snow. And I know this is finally our final chart here. Wanted to just bring it up. The haul index. Throwing you a lot of charts right now, but it's important to see that if it's red, it's probably what's considered a backhaul. More trucks than loads. If it's blue, please stay around those areas, aside from potentially California, because even though it may be blue, spot rates are taking a bloodbath.
Yeah, very interesting chart right there that is happening as far as the haul index, right? Because you're looking at blue to blue, but you've got to mix that with the trucks that are in that market as well, right?
Yeah, you have to supersede it, and that's almost like a load balance of
no, it's an excellent chart. I like to look at this one and then look at the one that you had there, the weighted tender rejections or the weighted rejection index, because for a market to show up on that, something significant has had to happen, especially in Nashville, which is not a large market. market.
Yeah, it's
right?
very small. So it's extremely, unless the recent storm system came through or some sort of disruption, like you normally don't see that kind unless, I mean, there's heavy automotive areas in parts of Smyrna, Mount Joliet, and other areas. So maybe there's some automotive disruptions that we're seeing in the data, but Nashville is, like you said, kind of one of those smaller, not a flyover market, but
no, but it's not one that is going to affect the national average. And that weighted rejection, that blue on Nashville means it is affecting the national average.
Significant
so there's
within
significant movement in that market right there to look at as far as tightening.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy thing is, that's the only thing that's been tightening. We're still seeing these demand, and it's showing up in the data. And it's definitely going to be a hard operating environment for carriers of all sizes, because now customers are going to get smart and possibly tender those loads to cheaper carriers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thomas. Very insightful. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. Right now, I'm going to toss it over to a quick break, and then we'll be back.